that involves the outdoors. When you're in the outdoors, it's far more exciting. The individual, it stimulates him more than if he were sitting in a class telling of his exciting experience. And you dig, your student and myself and any professional is experiencing the excitement himself, the excitement of discovery.
Every morning you go out to the site. From just looking along the reservoir, you see deer, drinking, and it's just beautiful. I've learned so many things this summer.
The only way to get to Sheep Rock Shelter nowadays is by boat. At the time of the birth of Christ, people were coming here by land as well. When Moses was leading the Israelites across the Red Sea, primitive Indians were coming, who knows by what means, to dwell beneath these cliffs. And before that, too, they came. The shelter at Sheep Rock has been a place of human habitation for at least 6 and perhaps 8,000 years. Because of its location, beneath the brow of great sheltering cliffs, Sheep Rock has kept a unique guest book of its human visitors. Here, in neat levels, one above the other, lies the record of 10 millennia of human development. This film is the story of the excavation of this unusual scientific prize. It is also the story of the discovery by a group of college undergraduates of the excitement involved in the youngest of the sciences, archaeology.
We have two types of archaeologists, we call them, the hairy-chinned and the hairy-chinned. The hairy-chinned is the guy who sits in the museum and plays with these pretty artifacts. The hairy-chested is the guy who gets out and digs in the field and works more for science than collecting antiquities.
I'd wanted to go on an archaeology dig this summer, and I asked around the department, and they told me that you had to go to a school before anybody would take you along on an expedition. And so I decided, well, I might as well forget it, because my mother would never let me traipse off to the Great Southwest or something like that. And then I found out about this school, and I moved heaven and earth to get here.
We're an old Pennsylvania Dutch family, and we've always, studied regional histories of our ancestors in the area and antiques, which I probably will go into after I get out of school, the antique business.
Ever since I've been a little girl, I've always been interested in ancient cities and everything like that. And it's just grown up with me that that's what I'm going to do. Go out and collect fossils, anything old.
I started out in Boy Scouts studying the American Indian, and I've done Indian dancing, and I make costume parts, and I used to fight with the Boy Scouts because they were never authentic enough in there. I used to get mad at them for being showmen instead of, I guess what you would say, anthropologists.
Sheep Rock was discovered by an amateur archaeologist in 1957. Since then, it has been dug intermittently by archaeologists working under the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. But this summer of 1966, a group of students from the Pennsylvania State University take on the job in earnest, spurred on by the knowledge that flood control plans call for the inundation of this whole ledge as the reservoir below is enlarged. So this is no mere field trip. It's a legitimate and urgent scientific project. And though none of these students has ever turned a trowel before, all are being counted on to do professional level work. Too much is at stake here to do otherwise. The man who knows most what is at stake is the expedition's director, Dr. Joseph Michaels of the Department of Anthropology at Penn State. We visited him in his laboratory on the Penn State campus and asked him to explain the particular significance of Sheep Rock as an archaeological find.
There are two important aspects to its significance. The first is that the site is a dry rock shelter, which means that the organic refuse of man's occupation has been preserved through time. Normally in an archaeological site, the organic refuse is decayed and decomposed and no longer present as the archaeologist digs. So that here at Sheeprock we have a catalog of materials which ordinarily the archaeologist does not see, things like matting, moccasins, bedding, basketry, cordage, things of this sort, which tell us a great deal about his material culture, which otherwise we wouldn't have recorded.
This is preserved because of the overhang.
Yes, the overhang prevents precipitation from hitting this area of the deposit, but also the fact that the shelter itself is oriented in such a way that the wind is deflected. The prevailing wind patterns are deflected so that precipitation is not blown in underneath the rock shelter also.
There's another important significance I know too. Would you tell us about that?
Right. The important thing besides the fact that we get organic refuse, which is very important, is the fact that the site is a stratified site, which means that the cultural refuse deposited through time is left in place. The earliest refuse is at the bottom, the latest refuse is at the top. You can see it better on this diagram over here. At the lowest portion of the deposit, 18 to 20 feet from the top, you have the refuse of your early archaic occupation, and here the bone and tools of these people are deposited. Above that, in the dirt and soil, we have the artifacts and the other cultural remains of the next phase of occupation, all the way up through to the historic period.
So the whole thing is a kind of a time capsule.
That's right, very definitely. And because it's been protected from wind erosion and water erosion all of these thousands of years, it represents for the Northeast one of the finest chronological sequences of cultural remains that we have available to us.
And so, uniquely protected from the elements for more than 8,000 years, Sheeprock must now see its treasures submerged beneath a man-made flood. But the threat of inundation must not be allowed to interfere with the fine art of scientific excavation. A dig, oddly enough, does not begin with digging.
First thing, you set up your site that you're going to dig into squares, which are 5 feet by 5 feet, and these are set up with a transit. So therefore you can locate any position in the field in a 5-foot square.
You have, your 5-foot squares, and you take measurements below a datum point, which was originally at the top of the site before it was dug. And you take measurements from that all the time so you can place it vertically. And you have to place, when you find artifacts, you have to draw a diagram with this placed, on your square. And just this measurement in itself has to be precise.
I think it's very scientific. If it was sort of a field maneuvers or, let's dig up things, you go out and you dig, and without science, I don't think it would mean anything. If you didn't take time and you weren't careful and you didn't record things, the whole thing would be wasted.
Only after the entire site is parceled out into the all-important squares does the digging begin in earnest. Even so, a baseball umpire might be more at home here than a construction worker, for most of the earth has to be dusted away or troweled aside if precious artifacts are to be recognized and then recovered intact. It takes a special touch.
Well, the first 2 weeks, you're not familiar with anything. You pick almost anything looks like an artifact. So we kept a lot of stuff that really wasn't anything at all.
You find things about technique, digging with the trowel, just simple things like that, digging with an ice pick, how to uncover a jaw without smashing it into a million little pieces, and after smashing it, how to put it back together again.
You become used to looking for what shouldn't be there. You know what this place is supposed to look like, and if you find anything that doesn't look like it should be there, it probably means it's something. It just grows on you.
Sensitivity to the earth. That is the key to successful work in field archaeology. But sensitivity is not enough. For despite the fact that most of the instruments are child-sized, and the whole process is slow. An archaeological dig is by no means child's play.
It's like the Army, kind of. You find out how much you can do. Like, I didn't know I could work with a shovel out in the middle of a field under 90-degree heat for 4 days straight, but I can.
The first week of July or the last week of June, so this hot spell was about 100 degrees every day, and we were working on the survey site digging ditches, and it was really hard. I don't think I've ever done anything that hard. It was the heat. The heat is what did it too.
It was fairly hard work, but anything that's really worthwhile doesn't really come easy. If you're finding things which interest you, like artifacts and stuff, you don't really think about the work.
The first time I was at the site, we were sifting and going through all that dirt. I said, oh, how horrible. But now, you know, I go into it and just dig right through and come out filthy as anything.
After recognizable artifacts have been removed from where they were found, and careful notes and drawings made of that location, all the dirt from each of the squares is passed through a fine screen sifter. Here, everything larger than mere dust must be carefully examined by hand. In the 4 years of digging that have preceded this summer's work, some 80,000 fragments have been unearthed at Sheep Rock. When properly cataloged and interpreted, that material, along with what is being dug out now, will constitute an invaluable record of the cultural and physical development of the North American Indian. Proper identification in the field is essential. All the chips, pieces of cordage, projectile points or whatnot are placed in bags that are tagged by level and by square. Previous findings have already enabled scientists to reconstruct the time sequence of the Sheep Rock levels. This dig is designed to tie down the scale with new evidence, and above all to discover, if possible, the remains of the great-grandfather of the American Indian in North America. And so they dig, down into earth that was on the surface when Western civilization was in its infancy. But hoped-for discoveries aside, does an experience like this really mean anything to the personal development of the student? Does it lend itself to the kind of dialogue between student and professor that college undergraduates are so anxious to find in this day of large classes and impersonal instruction? We asked Dr. Michaels.
I think so. I think that the student has a more effective relationship with his professor. He has he's able to develop a dialogue out in the field which is sustained and intensive, and has a chance of, I think, having a more complete relationship with him than he can have in the classroom. And in the classroom, there is the impersonality of it all, and you don't have this in the field. You're working in the same pit many times. You're building up fatigue. You're working hard physically all day together, and you have a chance to establish a good close relationship, I think, with the student, and the student with the faculty too.
In other words, would you say that there's a kind of a mutual trust at work in a dig like this?
I think so, yes. The professional places a great deal of responsibility on the student. The student is assisting him in the destruction of the site. As you excavate the site, you do destroy it as a scientifically valuable object, and if it's if the excavation is not rigorous and done properly, then there's been destruction of scientific knowledge for no purpose at all. So that when you give a student permission to take a trowel or a shovel or whatever he's using for excavation and remove the material from the deposit, you're trusting him that he will recover it rigorously and with good controls, and will not destroy the site needlessly. He does have trust placed in him, yes. And he's given an opportunity to make decisions as he excavates, which makes him, well, it makes him need to mull over what he's doing, to think about it more, to worry about it. And this is a very, very important, I think, very valuable experience for a student, to have to worry about the recovery of scientific information.
And the 23 Penn State undergraduates do their share of worrying at Sheep Rock this summer of 1966, but not all of the time. The summer is half over. A little worrying and a lot of hard work are transforming a gang of undergraduates into a crew of sophisticated professionals, but not too sophisticated.
I let out a war whoop when I found the first piece of pottery in the sifter, and I'm dancing around. Look, pottery, pottery!
Well, when I found my first projectile point, we were pretty excited, and we screaming and hollering, shouting for everyone else to come over and look at it. And we did the same thing when they found something.
We found something. We were hoping for a human burial, but, you can't have everything.
No, you can't have everything, even amongst the rich pickings at Sheeprock. Still, each new find is becoming more of a cause for excitement, because you have by now spent several days at what is probably the most important, and to many scientists, the most fascinating aspect of archaeology. You've had to miss the boat ride to do it, but somehow you don't particularly mind. The base laboratory for the Sheeprock operation is located at Juniata College, about 10 miles from the site. This is where the level bags are brought at the end of each day's dig. This is where each fragment, no matter how tiny, is given a number, and all the pertinent details about its original position in the ground are noted down. But above all, this is where the fledgling archaeologist really takes wing, letting his imagination soar as he tries to make anthropological sense out of what to the naked eye is hardly more than pieces of debris.
Well, this is, to me, the fun and games of archaeology. It's like a big detective puzzle. There's a jigsaw puzzle, detective story, whatever. You're looking for any clue you can find to put something together, to correlate two things, to say, aha, this is what happened in the past.
We usually had about 6 days in the field and then 3 in the lab and then back to the field again. Those 3 days we spent in the lab handling artifacts and looking at various artifacts gave us an idea of what we had already thrown away or what we kept was worthless. And it didn't take too long to pick up the idea of what should be kept and what shouldn't be kept.
The most important part of archaeology is reconstructing the cultures that you dig up the remains from. It takes quite a bit of deduction and so forth, trying to figure out what this particular artifact was used for and what another one was used for. You do need to make deductions from deductions and from deductions.
Everybody chips in, and we have specialists in all areas, really, in the field school, and that's a great help. People, who are geology majors or geography majors. And this has been a great help because, they know a little bit more about one particular area than you do, and then you, in turn, may know a little bit more about one other particular area. And so it's, everybody helps each other.
You try to tell whether they hunted or whether they were mainly fishermen or whether they practiced agriculture and so forth. And you have to do this with what you've dug up. Yes, we could use Sherlock Holmes here.
The Sheeprock findings might not seem impressive to laymen who know that man's history on this planet is now reckoned in the millions of years. Yet to the student of anthropology, the data being accumulated here in central Pennsylvania is as priceless as that being accumulated in Central Africa. For here are artifacts that reflect the details of the daily living of ordinary people, not priests, kings, or tribal shamans, but fishermen, hunters, weavers, potters, farmers, warriors, housewives, children. When the final report is written on Sheeprock, it will speak with authority about the successive stages of the development of culture in North America, thanks to the excellent quality of the organic remains and to the time capsule stratification that a geological quirk made possible. Still, no archaeologist worth his salt tablets can fail to perk up and feel the pride of the profession when something like a centuries-old bark basket is uncovered practically intact by the teamwork of scholars and students. And no anthropologist can fail to show interest in the grand prize of the Sheeprock find, now being studied by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission in Harrisburg. The almost complete skull of a man, believed to be in excess of 4,000 years old. Still, to the modern young anthropologist, The profession is most concerned ultimately with neither artifacts nor bones, tombs or tomahawks, but with society. Anthropology is, after all, a behavioral science, and its mission is defined, at least for the younger men, by a sense of service to the society of the present and hopefully even greater service to that of the future.
Well, of course, we would argue among ourselves as to what is the most important mission of anthropology today. I personally feel that the most important mission is to participate in a program which will make anthropology as a behavioral science a predictive science about human behavior and the role of various kinds of institutions in human life.
In other words, you don't see the anthropologist as a kind of a curator of museum pieces?
No, not whatsoever. I think that he's concerned with living cultures in the present and the future as well as in the past.
Well, how would an anthropologist, very briefly, function in terms of a future culture?
Well, the anthropologist has available to him now and will have in the future even more, so a comparative framework of cultures and how people live in various ways and through time. And with this comparative material, he's in a position to contribute generalizations about human behavior, the patterns that recur through time and from one culture to another. And with knowledge of these patterns and associations of various kinds of behavior, he can contribute perhaps some information as to what we can expect the future to be like.
Whatever the role of anthropology in the future, it is certain that its field arm, archaeology, has come a long way from the time more than half a century ago when Heinrich Schliemann hunted and pecked his way down to the 7 cities of ancient Troy. Archaeology is a science now, replete with high standards, precise techniques, and a special jargon all its own. With the addition of modern refinements like carbon dating, infrared photography, underwater techniques, and the like, archaeology is certain to become even more specialized. But it will still hinge on the dig, and the dig will doubtless always be a refreshing and valuable change from the more familiar rhythms of the college classroom.
I don't think that you could compare it to a classroom. I think that it's worth 10 classroom courses in archaeology digging. You can't be really taught this stuff without doing it, and I think it's much more valuable than a classroom experience.
I don't think anything can compare to the actual experience of doing it. I think you have to do it to really understand what it's about. I mean, studying it is okay, but you can't really understand it until you actually do the digging.
There's nothing like the actual experience of digging in, learning how far you have to go, how to uncover something important like a bark basket without ruining it completely, something which you couldn't possibly learn in a classroom.
Only a few of these students will become professional archaeologists. The rest will go on to be psychologists, school teachers, librarians, antique dealers, or whatnot. But long after the waters of the Raystown Reservoir have covered the ledge at Sheep Rock, these young people will remember the discoveries they made here, discoveries about the history of man in North America, and, perhaps more important, discoveries about themselves.
I've always been fascinated by antiques, for one thing, and just this summer I've decided, probably from this experience, to go into antiques.
We're all basically goody hunters at heart. I mean, there's still this thrill of discovery when you find an artifact that you don't know what's just below you in the next layer. This might be the discovery of the century. If I could find this, here I'd have it made. I mean, I could really think, to me, I would have discovered as much as Schliemann did when he discovered Troy.
The more I know about archaeology, the better I like it. And this summer has done a lot to confirm that.
It's exciting, the whole thing.
It's really an experience. It's really something different.
It's just what I thought. I like it a lot, even more than I thought I would.
You learn the truth of the old saying that adventure is somebody else having a rough time 1,000 miles away.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that are worthwhile excavating and learning about in our own country, but we don't have to go rushing off to the Middle East.
I thought I'd be in, specialize in Mexico, but now I don't know. The Eastern United States is getting me pretty interesting.
You're dealing with man. You have to live with man all the time. The more you know about him, well, he's an interesting animal. Let's face it, he's the dominant animal on the earth today, and it's exciting to know more about him, speaking of myself also.
I like anthropology. I think no one should graduate from college without having some experience in anthropology, because it teaches you. You learn to look at yourself. It's like looking in a mirror, and you find out what this organism is called man, how he functions physically and how he functions culturally. And I think a lot, if more people could gain an appreciation of anthropology, there'd be less problems in the world as far as people getting along with people, because you learn the limitations that men have, and you learn what cultural differences are and different ways of looking at things. And it's just, I think it's an essential part of an educated man's education.
In your dig, your student and myself and any professional is experiencing the excitement himself, the excitement of discovery.